march. Forward, march.
Mr. Maravich, I'll turn it over to you for public participation. Oh, before that, we have something else.
So, first of all, there's just a procedural issue. Unfortunately, our board secretary and assistant board secretary are out this evening, so the board will need to appoint a temporary secretary. So I will just read the motion that can be for the record, and then there'll need to be a second, a first, a second, and a voice vote. So the motion is to approve Karen Troutman as the temporary secretary for this meeting.
So moved. Case?
Case first, you have a second?
Kennedy?
Dr. Kennedy, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And obviously, I don't know if Ms. Troutman's good at bingo. I think that's probably comparable way to do with taking the votes down, but if we can specifically identify ourselves, I think on first and seconds, so that it's a little easier for her to make sure she's got everything noted. Rules, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just want to remind the public that's here this evening that we do have a district mask mandate. So if you do not have a mask with you or you do not have a mask on, please raise your hand, let us know, and or put your mask on so that we don't have to ask you to leave the boardroom. Despite what your beliefs might be, our district does support the mandate, and the board has approved that as a requirement for all individuals that are indoors. Thank you.
These are the rules of public participation for school board meetings pursuant to the Sunshine Law, Robert's Rules, and board policy. The following are the rules of public participation. Individuals attending the meeting are expected to conduct themselves in a responsible and respectful manner that does not disrupt the meeting. Public comment is not question and answer, but instead is an opportunity to offer comment on matters that are or may come before the board. All comments must be directed to the board as a body and not to any individual board members or administrators. Clapping, calling out, or cheering is not permitted. Signs are not permitted. Chattering during the meeting are not permitted, nor are any types of conversations in the room. Individuals may not approach the board tables at any times. Individuals should speak from the speaker's podium. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per individual. I run the timer. I will give you a notice at 1 minute, and the alarm will go off at 3 minutes. Any person making any threats of any type, personal, offensive, impertinent matter, or becoming unruly may be removed from the meeting and may be cited by local police. The above expectations are outlined in Board Policy 903, which is on the district's website within board docs.
Thank you. I believe you have 2, Mrs. Cocker? I have 1.
So if anybody's new at this, the agenda items will be done now, and then the non-agenda items will be done at the end of the meeting.
Okay, first, Jeff Giannakovo. Wilson School District Comprehensive Plan.
So I had the opportunity to digest, albeit minimally, the Wilson Comprehensive Plan as it appeared on the agenda for the first time today, it seemed. So a question for the board administration, do we feel it's appropriate to give minimal notice for a policy like that has a 1 to 3 year shelf life for running policies? And seemingly as impactful as that one, I feel the community needs to hear and deserves to hear proper debate, discussion on a 60-page presentation like that, which would have impact on all students. Can this board not see it as problematic yet again, as this is presented last minute with seemingly no opportunity to review? I've been active here throughout the board doc site. I can't recall seeing this plan previously. I'm not 100% sure what it is, because I just didn't have time to digest it all. I'm not sure what its core function is, as it contains a handful of things we've discussed in this room in regards to the pending equity policy, but I did notice something concrete and 100% undebatable from page 34, and I quote, this is I as the chief of school administrator attesting, affirm that the plan was placed for public inspection and comment in the LEA offices and in the nearest public library before the next regularly scheduled meeting of the board and for a minimum of 28 days prior to approval by the board or governing body and submission to the department, end quote. So that's right from page 34, I believe, of the plan. I'm not sure where our LEA offices are exactly. I've called all 3 libraries local to us. None of them could confirm that this policy was on display, nor did anyone I speak to really understand that that was a thing Wilson School District would do. They weren't familiar with us sending out policies for public review and to digest. And they're telling me it's not common practice for the district to do that, to print copies of policies to be voted on, so that the public who may not have access to the internet can actually review and wonder. So my question, and I was wondering if I can get an answer to this, on whether this comprehensive plan was actually put on display as instructed. As you will affirm, should you approve it tonight, was it put on plan if it gains approval? No answer. Okay. So before the vote, let's let the record stand that the administration is going to choose to not answer if that was on display for 28 days in a library local to us or not. Thank you.
Michael Kaminskis, Agenda Comprehensive Plan, Superintendent Goals.
I'm a guy who looks at process. So let me start off with the superintendent goals from the 16th August school board meeting. Then I'll look at the superintendent goals from the 20 September school board meeting today and the comprehensive plan for today. First off, looking at the 16 August to the transfer to the 20 September goals, 6 were carried over, okay? 1 was dropped, and I give that a kudo because it said that Dr. Fadley would be seeking or providing solutions to problems. My experience as a leader and a manager is that problem solutions are best coming from the ground up. They're the people who do the job. They know where the problems are, and they have a good idea of what the solution should be. You discuss the input from the people providing the problems and recommended solutions, and then support them as a leader with the resources they need to get the job done. Now, looking at today's goals to the comprehensive plan, 7 were carried over into the comprehensive plan. 2 are new, and 5 should not be goals as they are standard job responsibilities for any leader or manager. These 5s are not in the comprehensive plan, which is good. Some goals are also educational equity based, but we haven't discussed or defined what educational equity is yet with that policy. And so how do you get that point across? I think of Nancy Pelosi and the Affordable Care Act. Nancy Pelosi and the Affordable Care Act on the fact that she was supposed to give 3 days notification so that all representatives could read the Affordable Care Act, which is like 850 pages. And they were printing out the pages at the government printing office when she wanted to vote on it. I have a problem with the comprehensive plan and the first set of goals, although it seems like today's set of goals maybe corrected some of them. Acronyms. Acronyms should be filled out, explained fully the first time used in any document or part of the document that can be printed out separately. I worked for a general officer, Air Force civil engineer, 2-star general. Little guy about 5'2", but he has steel trap mind. Okay? So spell out all of your acronyms. I have a lot more, but I didn't realize I was going to take that long. Thank you.
David Weimer, goals.
Good evening. Hopefully everybody can hear me with my mask on. Everybody okay? Good. I just, Mr. Hart, as president, I'm addressing you and the board. And I had to scratch my head a little bit. From the last meeting, in terms of goals, I just need some clarification about equity goals versus superintendent and district administration goals, and how that all fits with the superintendent's charge as the leader of the organization. The best way that I can explain it is that a goal follows an acronym of SMART. Specific, you can see these are specific. Measurable, many may be or may not be. It's up to you as a board member to figure that out. Achievable, I would, after reading it quickly, look at them to be achievable, relevant, and timely. Timely, I would suggest that you put a timeline to the goals. If I were giving advice to the board, I would make sure that these get drilled down and that they are measurable, and that you follow what would be a standard management protocol using the acronym, thank you, using the acronym of SMART, and it's easy to look up on Google. And that way you could drill in and actually have accountability for goals, because goals are set to have accountability. And so if you don't know what you're working towards, and you don't know if there's enough time to get it done, you're going to probably end up chasing your tail a little bit here. So I know it's a first draft. I would just say make them measurable, and 15, you're going to be pretty busy. So thank you.
Thank you. President Hart, that's all.
Learning program. It's an update, and it'll be given by Mrs. Molly Mack.
Hello, good evening, everyone. As mentioned, my name is Molly Mack, and I'm the Executive Director of the Wilson Education Foundation, so thank you for letting us be here this evening to share. Just to give a little bit of background information, in the past, the foundation has partnered with the Wilson School District to offer the Bulldog Summer Blast. Traditionally, that has been a 2-day-a-week program offered in the summer that would run 6 weeks in June and July. The camps are held at 2 of the Sinking Spring Playground locations, Brookfield Manor, and the main site on Evans Avenue. The cost in the past has been around $75 for students to attend, and it's been offered to students entering grades 1 through 5. Back in the spring, we received some great news. Dr. Stacy Stout approached us and let us know that the district had received some ESSER funds. If you're not familiar with ESSER funds, it's elementary and secondary school emergency relief funding. That would allow us to provide the program free this year to any students that registered. This was great news. We were so proud to be a part of it. The goal was to mitigate learning loss and provide extra academic summer learning. Changing the name to Summer Learning Camp, we created a more academic curriculum, and we also got to offer the camp extended from 2 days a week to 4 days a week. Also over the 6 weeks time in June and July. The Education Foundation was proud to be a part of this beneficial program, which positively impacted many students in the Wilson School District. We had 180 students attend. We've sent out a survey, and we've received overwhelming positive feedback. Two of the most impressive things to me were 98% of families that filled out the survey said they would send their students back again, and they thought that their students benefited from the program. And 90% of those families that filled it out said they'd send them back even if they had to pay a cost. At this time, I'd like to introduce Galen Newman. He's a Discovery teacher at Green Valley Elementary, and he was our program coordinator this year, and he's going to present a little more information.
Thank you. So I just wanted to talk about the program here. 3 sites, 6 weeks, 24 STEM activities. It was 30 teachers, a huge endeavor, and it really did make a huge impact on students and families in the district. Kids were reading, kids were writing, kids were discussing. They really had a lot of really great adult-child interactions, things that we know that kids need, right? So it was a really great opportunity for them to have fun, be outside, and to be academic. About 3 weeks into the program, a parent comes up to me and says, "Oh, Mr. Newman, I have to tell you something." And I was a little bit worried. And she said to me, "Every morning I bring my kids over to the summer learning and they fight me." And I said, "Oh no." So, and she finally says to me, "But when I pick them up, they can't stop telling me about all the awesome activities they've been doing." And she says, during the school year, it's hard to get anything out of them. But with this summer learning, they're just telling me about all the great things that they did each day. This child here is exploring erosion using a big ice ball. So it was really stuff like that. We were able to slow down, we were able to work in small groups, and we're able to just have some fun and learn and explore. So we were able to recreate the classroom. That was something that we really wanted to do. Recreate the classroom experience. Kids were able to get magnifying glasses and crowns and rulers and just dive deep into some of these STEM activities. And the teachers were amazing. 30 teachers, so many years of experience. And they were able to really expand on these STEAM activities: science, technology, engineering, art, math. And it was a lot of fun, and I invite you all next year to come out and experience it with us. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for us? Anyone? Sure. Yes, we had 180 students, and so I would say roughly around 160 families, because there were a lot of siblings that attended the camps this year. And we did, as the director of the foundation, I attend many of the Meet the Teacher nights, and this year, one of the highlights was so many families coming up to me when they saw my table, begging me to have the program again next year, which was great. So, and I did want to let everyone know the total cost of the camp was $68,950 was the total for all the teachers paid and all the supplies we bought. The children also, everyone that attended every day got a free lunch through Wilson School District that were delivered to the sites each day. So, any other questions?
Mr. Hart, I just want to take an opportunity to thank Mrs. Mack for the partnership with the Wilson Education Foundation and the school district to really get back and focus on what we should be doing with kids, and that is giving them experiences to learn that are engaging, creating that thirst for knowledge and excitement for learning, and most of all, I think the opportunity to get together and have fun. And it's just rewarding for me and for my team to see this happening in the Wilson School District, because this is why we're here. Sometimes we get distracted with other stuff, but this is really why we're here in Wilson. is to do the best we can for kids. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to the entire Wilson community that supports the foundation and allows us to be part of programs like this. So thank you for letting us be here.
Thank you.
1.8, communication. Mr. McCaffrey will introduce our Wilson School District Comprehensive Plan for our presentation this evening.
Thank you, and thank you for having me this evening to give you a little overview of the Wilson School District Comprehensive Plan by the Pennsylvania Department of Education. It is a cycle of improvement, continuous improvement, and we really focused on our mission statement, obviously that's up there, as well as our vision statement to guide our work through this committee. So we'll get to it. So PDA's comprehensive planning is Chapter 4 of school law that's required by PA school entities. Every 3 years, we have to do the professional education plan and the professional education plan, and special education plan. And this year was the 6th year we had to do the induction plan, the program of student services plan, and the gifted education plan, along with the 2 that happen every 3 years. And this is all housed into the Future Ready Comprehensive Planning Portal, which is different than the Future Ready PA Index. PA Index is where we see our PSSA scores, our Keystone scores, our graduation rates. So that is a data warehouse where this is a tool you go into and kind of complete one step at a time. So just to kind of give you an overview of the process that we went through, as well as a list of people who partook in this steering committee. It's pretty interesting, and looking back from what this world is now, in 2018 to 2020, we embarked into social emotional learning. We also looked at continuous school improvement. We brought in about 70 to 80 teachers, administrators, working with an outside professional development firm on looking at how do we improve our schools. And it was really interesting. The beginning of that was the typical, we got to improve our math scores. We have to improve our English grade 8 scores. But as the buildings really dug down into the data, it really became apparent that kids, we really have to worry about that whole child piece and the social emotional well-being of our kids. And it was really neat to see, because all the buildings were working independently, and they all came to that conclusion. That's really how we're going to grow our kids academically and into the whole children that they are. And through that work, we also discovered the redefining readiness from the Association of Superintendents that really can help us report out to our community, our teachers, and our students in saying, like, what does it mean to be life ready and career ready? We're really good at the college ready piece, but how do we have kids understand what it means to be life ready too as well, and developing grit and persistence and things of those natures. So February 4th of this past year, we got together for the first time as a steering committee and looked at the educational value statements, and that was basically like, what does it mean to be a student at Wilson, and what is your kind of buy-in? What does it mean to be a teacher, and what do we expect of you? What does it mean to be a community member, and what do we expect of you? So we developed all those values first to kind of guide our work, which the next meeting of our steering committee, that's when we looked at our data. We had 3 different subcommittees that broke out of that steering committee. One looking at the Future Ready PA Index, that's our PSSA scores, our Keystone scores, our absenteeism, our graduation rates, that hard data the state collects on us, and it's publicly viewable by anybody in our school district online. And then we looked at our equity pieces of, for instance, like how many of our EL students who get into higher level math courses. Just because they don't speak English, maybe they're really good at math. Are we making a pathway for those kids to get into a higher level mathematics? And then, of course, we have other academic indicators, CDT scores, and other particular academic indicators that we looked at. The challenge was with COVID, a lot of that data was older because we didn't collect that data for a couple years too as well. So it was a little bit challenging, but most data in these areas seem to trend the same way over the years. There are not generally many anomalies there. So the interesting thing was that work we did in 2018 and 20 really set us up to handle the issues that were coming to our students throughout this pandemic of mental health issues. So looking back, it was kind of like we knew it was coming, almost the type of work that we did. May 6th, then, we shared those strengths and challenges that those 3 different subgroups worked separately on as a larger steering committee, and kind of had conversations about, okay, here's our strengths with our scores, here's our strengths with our other academic indicators. Where do we really want to focus on? Because there's so many strengths and challenges we need to look at. And that's where we kind of pared it down to come up with the priorities of the plan. And then July 1st, we posted it for public review online for the required 28 days. We took a little bit longer, took it down on August 16th. We had some public comment of 5 people posted comment to that. And then the BCIU, really thank them because they're the experts in this area. They've been involved way before February 4th, maybe 4 or 5 times. Dr. Veronica Andes, Mike Dillon, and myself met with the BCIU and say, is this the right way to approach this? Is this the way we should be going? And they really did a great job of supporting us. And you can also see the list of professionals up there, as well as students, parents, community members up there too as well, who also supported this steering committee and giving their time. So I really thank those people as well for this too. So the established priorities that came out of this plan, this 3-year plan, is middle school curriculum, implementation of rigorous, vertically articulated, standards-aligned curriculum delivered with instructional fidelity. If you look at Future Ready PA Index, most school districts dip their scores in middle school. We really feel strongly about the elementary school curriculum that we've implemented over the past several years with Eureka Math, Lucy Calkins, and middle school curriculum has kind of been the traditional, hey, we have a textbook for this course, that's our curriculum, and over the years, the teachers kind of make their own curriculum through that. I always say that teachers are salespeople. They're not necessarily curriculum designers. So let's make the expert, or allow us to choose expert curriculum designed for them. So supporting our middle school curriculum in 6th grade last year with illustrative mathematics has proved to have been really great. And you can hear it from even students saying, hey, math is fun now. I never thought I'd say that in front of you as a former math teacher, but we do have kids saying that math is fun now. So really interesting to see the engagement in the middle school math curriculum being piloted last year into this year. And then also we're looking at bringing in Lucy Calkins' units of study into the middle school curriculum as well. And number 2, which lines up with the redefining readiness indicators of being life, career, and college ready, were the other priorities that were brought through this work of that steering committee. So if you'd like any questions answered, feel free to ask me. I'll also be leaning on Dr. Stout as well, as she's been heavily involved in this process too as well.
I'll just say, as someone who got to actually work in the process, it was really rewarding. It was nice to be able to work with administrators, with students, with staff, with community, to bring this all together. So I got a lot out of it. So I thank you guys for it.
Thank you.
Just a question with regard to the community member that brought up the 28 days. So does the wording need to be changed? Was that actually in a library, or has the format changed where it's online?
Yeah, I've never
If so,
seen the
do we need-
library until he noted that piece.
I haven't either, so
Yeah.
does that wording need to change, just so we're?
In the portal that we have available to us, it just says you have to post it online and make it available in the superintendent's office, so that's what we did, but then that document, I just didn't read the fine
So we
print on
should
page
shore
34.
that up just for the future.
Sure. I mean, I would probably suggest that's just an old thing that's been in there, because that summary document, you push go, and the portal creates that document. We don't create that document for us. We fill out the boxes in the portal, and then that spits out as a summary document.
So if I'm in the
for us.
public, though, how do I know that this is even out there?
Well,
Other
we
than
posted
walking into the
online.
superintendent's office and asking?
Yeah, and we posted it online on our announcement page for the whole month of July, and that's the
Okay.
requirement of PDE.
Okay, great.
All right, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
1.9, looking to approve the Wilson School District Comprehensive Plan for 2021 through 2024 as presented. Looking for a motion?
Cocker first.
Mrs. Cocker first, do I have a second?
Casper.
Mrs. Casper, any discussion?
I just want to make sure, I feel uncomfortable with this right now because of what that gentleman said, that we don't follow all the correct procedures. So I just got a little concerned about that, so I'm just going to abstain from this, but I don't have enough information. Unless somebody here can tell me we follow the correct procedures, I don't feel comfortable.
Dr. Bailey?
I can respond to the portal that the team was working from, indicated that we were required to post it online, which we did on our website, and to have a copy available in the superintendent's office. So that was the directions that were given from the Pennsylvania Department of Education portal that we utilized. Now, I can't guarantee Mr. Martin, that there isn't something on the Pennsylvania Department of Ed website that says something that has not been updated, but I can tell you that our team followed the process with fidelity.
Can I just ask, would it be a big deal, would it change things very much if we tabled it and put it in a library for 28 days?
That's up to the board. We can certainly do that.
Dr. Faley, our deadline for PE is November, so we do have plenty of time.
That's why we have it before you this evening, and that's why we put it on the website and in my office as required by the process. Certainly being posted on our district website announcement page for more than the required time. We did receive 5 responses and questions to the process, and those were answered.
I'm not debating the process. I'm just saying I don't want to roll in something that I don't know 100% is correct. I mean, if there's something that I'm sure you followed everything you're supposed to, but maybe that portal wasn't 100% accurate. So I don't want to be approving something that I'm not 100% sure is correct. That's all.
Okay, the will of the board, if I have a motion to table this in a second, we can do that till October.
I'll make a motion to table till
Mr.
October.
Schneider, we have a first, we have a second. Mr. Martin, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy? Yes. Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
The board did not meet in executive session since our last meeting.
So just so I am clear on the direction, tomorrow you want us to deliver a hard copy of this document to all the public libraries in our school district? Or which public library?
If that's not a requirement, we should just change the language at the bottom of the document to say this is the new procedure.
So my understanding is that's the way the portal responds to, that's the way, I'm looking for the regulation, I can't find it, it's not on the page, on the PDE page. I mean, I'll look at the regulation and get back to you, Dr. Faley, about what the regulation says, or if it's been amended, but it may have been amended and the portal just may not be updated, so.
Thank you.
Why don't we,
The language on the Department of Education website states that it must be made available for public inspection and comment for 28 days, and then it can be approved by the board and then submitted to PDE. It does not state where exactly it needs to be posted. And that's off the PDE site as of today.
all right, thank you. Why don't we err on the side of caution, have it posted to the libraries within the district, in your office and online? Would that be okay? Okay, then.
May
I don't
I
know
just,
I don't know what the procedure is for the library, just taking a document from somebody and saying, here's our document, but we can inquire.
I believe all the local libraries have computers. So therefore, it's right in the library right now. They just have to utilize the computer.
Well, I don't think it would harm us to reach out to the libraries maybe and say, if people inquire, here's how you access it through online.
Okay, thank you. You okay with that, Dr. Fadley?
That's fine.
Thank you. Looking for a motion to approve the minutes of the school board meeting held on September 7th, 2021 as attached. Looking for a motion? Mr. Martin first, do you have a second?
McCray?
Mr. McCray, any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Treasurer's report, Mr. Martin.
Mr. President, I submit for approval tonight the following Treasury report, investment report, the general fund and capital funds reports as presented.
Second case?
Mr. Case, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Case?
Yes?
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Hart? That's 9-4, 0 against.
Payment of bills, request approval, I'm sorry, Mr. Martin, don't want to steal your thunder.
Mr. President, I submit for approval out of the general fund, $2,477,346.38. Out of the capital reserve, $47,675.30. Out of the 2019A construction fund, $2,472,703.51. And out of the 2021C construction fund, $596,493.09.
Motion to approve the payment of bills, do we have a second?
Schneider, second.
Mr. Schneider, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mr. Hart? That's 9 yes, 0 no.
Financial reports, Mr. Martin.
Yes, Mr. President, I submit the following reports, all for the month of August. The cafeteria report, the child care report, and the activity counts for Southern Middle School, West Middle School, and the senior high, as presented.
Financial reports, looking for a second.
McCray.
Mrs. Casper, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
That's 9 yes, 0 no.
Superintendent's report, Dr. Fadley.
Thank you, President Hart. This evening, I present the superintendent's report, which is inclusive of personnel program recommendations and the superintendent goals for 21-22 school year.
Looking for a motion to approve superintendent items 6.1 through 6.9 as presented.
Cocker first.
Mrs. Cocker first, do we have a second?
Casper.
Mrs. Casper, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Hart? That's 9 yes, 0 no.
Consent items. Mrs. Cocker.
7.1, accept with gratitude the following donations as presented. A, from Western Berks Ambulance Association, considerable amounts of the following: hand sanitizer, masks, gloves, etc., delivered to operations to be distributed as needed to all buildings. B, from Jennifer Kwiatkowski, mother of 2 sons at West Middle School, bottles of hand sanitizer, 2 cases of 32-ounce bottles, 12 to a case, and 10 cases of 16.9-ounce bottles, 12 to a case, delivered to West Middle School.
Thank you. Looking for a motion to approve the following donations with gratitude.
Schneider.
Mr. Snyder first, do we have a second?
Kennedy second.
Dr. Kennedy second. Any discussion?
Just a point, I believe, if I'm correct, Dr. Faley, back in spring of 2020, we as a district went through all of our supplies of masks, hand sanitizer, gloves, et cetera, and provided them to Western Berks and other similar organizations, and they were very grateful at that time for that when there was a shortage throughout the country, and this is maybe one of their ways of thanking us for that. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Human Resources, Mrs. Cocker.
8.1, request to approve approval of the revised job description for school social worker as attached. 8.2, request approval to increase the hours of the kindergarten teaching assistants from a bank of 452 hours per week to 15 hours per week for the 2021-2022 school year, increase in hours funded by ESSER funds. 8.3, request approval of a contract with Vector Solutions for training of all staff pending solicitor review and approval. 8.4, requesting approval of the attached contracts to provide athletic trainer services at our middle schools until a full-time athletic trainer is hired, pending solicitor review and approval.
Looking for a motion to approve Human Resources agenda items 8.1 through 8.4 as presented.
McCray?
Mr. McCray first, do I have a second?
Cocker?
Mrs. Cocker, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
That's 9 yes, 0 no.
Under Student Services, Mrs. Cocker.
9.1, request permission to approve the adoption of a settlement agreement and release to establish an education fund to be held and managed by the district in the amount of $15,000 for legitimate educational expenses to settle and comprise all claims raised by the parents of a special education student and to authorize the board president and secretary to execute the agreement on behalf of the district. 9.2, request permission to approve the adoption of a settlement agreement and release for placement in lieu of FAPE at a private school program at a cost not to exceed $34,560 in tuition and including $4,500 in attorney fees and costs for shared transportation for the 2021-22 academic year. 9.3, request approval of a service agreement with Dr. Stephen Kachmar to perform an independent educational evaluation at a fee not to exceed $4,000 in accordance with Board Policy 113.3. 9.4, request approval of a service agreement with the Berks Intermediate Unit for projected special education programs and related services for the 2021-2022 school year as attached.
Student Services agenda items 9.1 through 9.4 as presented. Do you have a motion?
Casper?
Mrs. Casper first, do you have a second?
Schneider?
Mr. Schneider, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
That's 9 yes, 0 no.
Under Technology and Media, 10.1, one older HP laptop to Habitat for Humanity. 10.2, request permission to sell and dispose of outdated, obsolete, and broken equipment to Sycamore International. Looking for motion to approve agenda items 10.1 and 10.2 as presented.
So moved. Case?
Mr. Case first, do I have a second?
Kennedy?
Dr. Kennedy, any discussion?
Mr. President, just a quick question. When we sell computers, or I'm sorry, donate computers, we clear them of everything, correct?
The answer to that is yes.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
That's 9 yes, 0 no.
11.1, request permission to contract with Home Care Solutions LLC for temporary custodial coverage. Looking for a motion?
So moved, Negrini.
Mr. Negrini first, do we have a second?
Second. Case?
Mr. Case, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
And Mr. Hart?
Yes.
That's 9 yes, 0 no.
Under Finance, 12.1, request approval to award the 2021-22 Winter-Spring Athletics bids. 12.2, request approval of the budget transfers dated June 30th, 2021. Looking for a motion? Mr. Martin first, do you have a second?
Schneider.
Mr. Schneider, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
That's 9 yes, 0 no.
Under Transportation, 13.1, request approval for a ride-share contract with Twin Valley School District for the transportation of up to 3 students to and from Hilltop Prep School. Looking for a motion?
Cocker?
Mrs. Cocker first, do we have a second? Mr. Martin, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mr. Hart? That's 9 yes, 0 no.
We do not have any policies on for tonight. Under miscellaneous, we have the enrollment report. And now to committee reports. 16.1, Berks Career and Technology Center, Mrs. Casper.
I do not have a report tonight. Our next meeting is this Wednesday.
West Wilson Equity Task Force, Mrs. Casper.
Yes, I would defer to Dr. Fadley for an update.
Thank you, Mrs. Casper. Wanted to provide an update to the work session that's scheduled to occur on September 28th from 6 to 8 p.m. in the boardroom. Back in August, we held a town hall where individuals from our community asked questions regarding equity in the Wilson School District. And really, we came away from that meeting with a greater understanding that more involvement in that process was being requested from a diverse representation in our community. So as a result of that meeting, we began developing a process where we would assemble a representative group of teachers, parents, students, community members. The board selected parents with diverse perspectives in a blind scoring. Those individuals have been notified. We have opened up the process for community members without children to apply. That application process is currently active on our website. So I would encourage any community members that want to be a part of this process that do not have children in our school district to access our website and fill out the application. We will hold that open until Thursday at the close of business day and notify individuals by the end of the week. There will be a process where we look at the draft policy that was created by the Equity Task Force. The process will look as follows. We will divide the group of representatives into 6 groups. Each of the groups will take an area of the draft equity policy and provide recommendations. At the close of the work session, each individual group will do a share out of their particular section of the equity policy and make their recommendations to the administrators present that evening. The administration will take those recommendations and create another draft of the policy based on the input from that evening and bring that back to the board for a second reading, discussion, and consideration moving forward. Additionally, during that work session from 6 to 8 p.m. on September 28th, the committee will work on the definition of equity as it is defined in the Wilson School District. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Martin.
Yes, Mr. President. I don't know if I've seen the list yet of the folks that were nominated and the scoring. I don't believe I've seen the list, and I may have missed it, but has the board received the list?
The board has not.
Okay, I think there's some issues with the list. and going through it, I think there was 51 applicants, and going through that list, it was quite obviously some of the people with comments were pretty racist. Do we weed any of those people out?
Dr. Hoffert, can you come forward and address these questions as he ran the process of sending out those selections?
So as you know, the board has provided the full list of applicants and the opportunity to assign points in any way and in any weight that the board chose. We didn't weed anybody out prior to that process. We provided you with all the applications that were provided to us, and it was up to the board to make those selections at that point.
Okay, so somebody that, I don't know, like I say, do you have that list available? Are we going to get that list and the points they scored?
Yeah, we can certainly make that public, to the board.
I think it's very important because, like I said, and I'm not trying to create an issue here, but I don't know how anybody can pick a person that is racist in their discussions. I think that's pretty biased. So that's why I'd like to see that list, and I'll make my comments accordingly once I see the list.
Okay.
Thank you.
We can provide that list to the board.
And while I'm sorry, while you're up there, this committee that's being comprised, I know there's 12 to 15 people from that list of the 51. I believe there's now going to be 2 taxpayers or parents without children, which I think is pretty low. But what is the total? I mean, we talk about there's going to be teachers, there's going to be administrators. Can you give me a breakdown of each group and number-wise?
Yeah, our goal was to have about an equal percentage of each group represented at the 6 tables. With a goal of having about 48 to 50 participants total, I believe.
Okay, so if there's 48 to 50 participants, that means the public is pretty much shut out.
Well, that's not accurate. We have reopened the application.
Just for two people.
Well, I don't think we determined a specific number.
Oh, okay, I see.
That may be how many have applied so far. I haven't seen the list.
No, I'm sorry. I thought there was a number of 2 in there. So all I want to make sure is that it's balanced.
Yeah.
It's a fair presentation because different groups think different ways. And if you have it tilted to one way, anything that comes out of the committee be tainted or biased, that's all. Just want to make sure it's a fair presentation and that's it. I'll let go with that.
That's our goal as well.
All right, thank you.
May I speak? I would think 48 to 50 people, I mean, if you want to add more, we could do 100. I mean, you're not going to get anything done with those kinds of numbers. I think, 48 to 50 should be about the max.
But I'm not questioning that as long as it's divided up. You can't have more administrators and teachers than you have public.
Okay, but we want to get something done as well, too. So I understand the balance, but we should probably cap it at some point with the numbers.
Oh, I'm not disagreeing, I'm sorry, I'm not disagreeing with what the number is, whether it would be 30 or, I'm not trying to debate the number, I'm just trying to debate that you don't have an unweighted percentage.
Fair enough.
That's all I'm saying.
A question with regard to, Dr. Bailey, you mentioned something about once the committee reviews and puts forth another reading. I mean, that's not the second reading then, right? Does that reset back to the first reading, I would imagine? Because you've changed it, or I'm assuming it's going to change.
Well, I think the process between the first and second reading allows for some revision. So I think that's what this is. Yeah. Okay.
I think the important piece with the second reading is the opportunity for the board to take a very good look at the recommendations that are coming from that group, to have open conversation in the public meeting, and be able to have discussion openly with one another about those recommendations before it comes back to the board for a final reading.
When do you expect the second reading? First meeting in October? How much time do you need to go over what committees go through?
I would think that based on the process that we've developed, that the turnaround time could be fairly quick. I would hope that we would be able to have that back on the agenda in the second reading or the second meeting in October.
Second reading. Okay, thank you. Berks County IU, Dr. Kennedy.
Thank you. I was unable to attend this month's IU meeting because it was the same night as West's Meet the Teacher Night, so I didn't get to go to that one.
Thank you.
And Curriculum Committee, we have a meeting coming up this Wednesday at 5 o'clock. 4 o'clock. Oh, good, thank God. 4 o'clock. That's even better.
Berks EIT, Mr. Schlossman. Extracurricular, Mrs. Cocker.
Yes, the extracurricular committee met this past Monday, or September 13th at noon. Some of the topics that we discussed, the PIAA is not making recommendations on health and safety plans. Therefore, we're going to continue the practice of what we've been doing all summer and season, and stay with our school-wide health and safety plan. And so nothing changes. If something does change, we will adapt accordingly. And we also discussed facility rates for outside groups or even Wilson groups renting our fields, and that is going to be looked at further and then discussed again next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Facilities, Mr. Negrini.
No report.
Finance, Mrs. Martin.
No report, but our first meeting will be October 4th, and we'll be discussing various topics at that time.
Thank you. Legislative, Mr. Martin.
Yes, not much is happening right now. The House came back today. The Senate is due back tomorrow. There's a lot of discussion, a lot of items that have really complicated the session because of COVID. The CRT thing is distracting those folks as well. But I don't see anything major coming out of it this year. There's a lot of discussion. I'll talk about some of those bills. There's Senate Bill 73, which is really to give districts the ability to take exceptions or request exceptions for the mandates that we have, many of them. That still is in committee, has not come out, excuse me, hasn't come out to the full legislators. There's other issues such as the Right to Know Act and trying to limit those, especially for situations where a business is requesting or an organization. There's also some changes. They're also requesting some changes that notifications for board meetings and such do not have to be put into papers because of the cost involved. That's a toss-up. I think that covers some of them, but I thought I'd just talk a little bit about last Tuesday there was a meeting of the COLA leaders, and the Pennsylvania School Board Association was the guest speakers. And unfortunately, this is neither bad nor good, I don't mean it that way. A lot of the time was devoted to the mask situation. The PSA was neutral on that, they weren't for or against. But they did, I thought was interesting, they did kind of chastise the governor for threatening, let me see, I'm make sure I get the right school district, the Tamaqua School District, for their not requiring masks to be worn. It's my understanding the state did this to show an example to other school districts not to do this, and it was intentionally leaked out, so that was a big part of the discussion. Some of those bills I just mentioned were also discussed. And also, the final thing that came up, of course, was charter schools, reformed charter schools, not reformed charter schools. So that's probably going to be one topic that's going to get addressed either this year or early next year in the current assembly. That's it.
Thank you. Human Resources, no report. Public Relations, Mrs. Troutman.
I do have just two quick items. First, one of the strategic ways that we are able to determine what our key stakeholders are thinking is by conducting a thought exchange. So this is a tool we've been using for the past few years. So now that we're a few weeks into the new school year, we launched an exchange. Actually, we just launched it on Friday to find out what we can do together to make the Wilson School District community even stronger. We'll be sharing the report of those thoughts with our board, district leadership team, and staff to determine what ideas and strategies our collective community feels will be best to make this a great school year. You can learn more about the exchange on the homepage of our district website, and the exchange closes on Sunday, September 26th, and the results will be analyzed and shared a few weeks later. I also wanted to let you know that in October, the Grandview Gallery, which actually is this room here, as well as in the hallway, is going to be celebrating 20 years of exhibiting art in honor of this achievement. We will be naming the permanent collection after its founder, Robert Chappell. Grandview Gallery is proud to present our rotating permanent collection, the Robert H. Chappell Collection, at a celebration event which will be held on October 2nd right here in this room from 12 to 4 p.m. The dedication ceremony will begin at 1 p.m. and Robert Chappell, the guest of honor, will be here to greet our guests. The Robert H. Chappell Collection will be displayed in the atrium of the Wilson High School Administration Building and throughout the campus. So much like a museum, this collection will be rotated at least twice a year and will ensure visitors a different experience each time they visit the Wilson High School campus. We are so grateful to be able to showcase the extraordinary talent of our alumni, staff, and community members, and we want to publicly thank the Grandview Gallery for all they do to celebrate the arts. Thank you.
Thank you. Education Foundation, Mr. Case.
Yes, the Education Foundation met this past Friday. It was a great meeting. It was nice to be back in person. Mr. Newman did talk about the summer learning camp, but you heard all about that tonight, so he covered a lot of the Education Foundation meeting. Some of the great things that came out of the meeting with the 9 out of 10 of the Education Foundation grants have been reviewed and approved, so we're going to find out a little bit more about the projects that are going to come out of that. And one of the big topics, for all the great things that the Education Foundation does, a lot of it is about fundraising. So one of the big events, and it's great to be back, October 9th at First Energy Stadium from 6:30 to 10 p.m., there's the Bulldog Bash for 2021. And tickets are on sale now. You can reach out to Mrs. Molly Mack at the school and get tickets. I believe you can also get them online. And it's going to be a great event. They are, let's see, the 2021 Legacy Award recipient is our own Dr. Stacy Stout. So we will be celebrating her and her career, which has been a fantastic run up to this point, and continues to be. And the 2020-2021 Teachers of the Year presentations are going to Mr. David Cooper from the Wilson High School Band and Miss Kara Stalter from Shiloh Hills. So lots to celebrate that day. It's a great night out and lots of food and drink and just celebration. And there's also, I believe there's going to be cornhole tournaments going on at the event. So it's going to be a lot of fun. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Technology, Mr. Schneider.
Got to hit the button. As many of you saw earlier, the technology department is donating a laptop to Habitat for Humanity. The last time I spoke, it was in regards to supply chain disruption. Most of the equipment is in. We're still waiting for some projectors and Wi-Fi equipment, but we're told that should be coming very soon. Our next meeting is October 4th.
Thank you. Student Outreach, Ms. Maddie Negrini.
Good evening. First of all, this past Friday, Wilson Minithon hosted their annual Gold Out game at the football game at Gursky Stadium. It was a huge success. There was a huge turnout from community members, the entire student body, including elementary, middle school students, and staff members. On Saturday evening, the Mental Health Council hosted their first ever suicide awareness walk on Gursky entitled Never Alone, and it was in honor of Suicide Prevention and Awareness Month. Many student and community members attended this walk to reflect as well as participate in a lot of mindfulness activities such as creating stress balls. At the end of the night, there was a really nice lantern lighting ceremony on Gursky Stadium to honor all of the victims to mental health. And lastly, both the Interact and Caring for Kids clubs volunteered this weekend in West Reading at the Fall Fest. Caring for Kids partners with Lawrence Foundation with the prize wheel, and all proceeds were matched with donations to the Opportunity House, and the Interact Club raised money in another way by selling water, popcorn, and grilled cheese to the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Negrini. Mr. Maravich?
I did find the regulation. It's 22 PA Code 4.13, and it merely states that it has to be available for public inspection for 28 days. It was amended in 2014, but I would have, and then 2008, but I would have to go back and pull the old PA bulletins to see what it said before that. But there's no reference on the website to library anymore.
Errors out of caution, we'll do that just to make sure it's available. All right. Mr. Maravich, we have non-agenda item speakers?
Sure. My clock back up.
Ready? You're going to read your part?
Oh, sure, you want me to read the whole thing over again?
Yes, please.
Sure. Rules of public participation. Individuals attending the meeting are expected to conduct themselves in a responsible, respectful manner that does not disrupt the meeting. Public comment is not question and answer, but instead is an opportunity to offer comment on matters that are or may come before the board. All comments must be directed to the board as a body and not to any individual board member or administrator. Clapping, calling out, or cheering is not permitted, nor are conversations in the audience. Individuals may not approach the board tables at any time. Individuals shall make their comment from the speaker's podium. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes. I do provide notice by letting you know that's 1 minute left, and then the buzzer will go off at 3 minutes. Any person making threats of any type, personal, offensive, impertinent matters, or being unruly may be removed from the meeting or may be cited by local police. The expectations are under Board Policy 903, which is on the website embedded within board docs.
You, Mrs. Cocker.
Yes, first we have Nina Majmudar, Equity.
First of all, my name is Neha Majmudar. I have 2 daughters that are in the Wilson School District. One actually just graduated. She was the class of 2021, and the other one is in 9th grade. First of all, I just want to say thank you to all the board members. I can just imagine what the last 2 years have been like for you, to work through the pandemic, to make decisions on a variety of issues. Some of you have gotten emails from me, and I'm sure a zillion other emails. So I just want to, first of all, thank you for everything that you are doing. I know this is not a paid position. I'm sure it took a lot of your personal time, so thank you. The second, I am a few weeks later from the forum, and I just wanted to say what I heard in the forum I'm glad that we're re-talking about the equity policy, but what I heard at the forum was a lot of discussion about what material should be in, the teacher should teach in the curriculum, what material should not, what topics should be taught. And I just want to say that I've been fortunate that I've seen 12 years of Wilson, and I think whatever the teachers, the administrators, the librarians are doing, they're doing a really good job. And they are presenting materials that are opening minds of our students and minds of even parents. You know, I can say that I learned more things through what my daughter's education is. So my only hope is that you as a board will continue to support our teachers, our librarians, our administrators, so that they can present the material that they think is important for the curriculum. That's it. Thank you.
Annette Garber, Equity Policy.
Good evening. I come tonight as a parent of 2 Wilson students, as a former Wilson educator at both middle schools, and as a current educator at RAC, working with multilingual students from all over the world. I came tonight to express my support of the efforts to initiate an equity policy here at Wilson, and I also feel the need to express support of our educators, as I understand some have come under recent criticism for their work. As parents and as educators, we all want our students to be prepared for the world. Our world is beautifully diverse, it is multicultural, it's filled with all kinds of people and experiences and perspectives, and all need a place at the table. Good teachers challenge assumptions. They don't just confirm them. The best teachers I've had were those that helped me see the world from a bigger perspective than my limited experience. I grew up in Lancaster County and have lived most of my adult life here in Berks County, so my outlook on the world was initially shaped by a fairly homogeneous population, people who look and tend to believe pretty similarly. But I've been fortunate enough to be exposed to other cultures and perspectives through the teachers I've had, through traveling to places like Kenya, Ireland, Latin America. Every time that I've traveled or spent time listening to the stories of the international students I work with at RAC, or have read books and articles written by people who look and believe differently than myself, those experiences have helped to broaden my appreciation and understanding of our very beautiful and very complicated world. But there are many students who do not have the opportunity to travel the way I've had, and so it is the teachers that bring the world to them. The equity policy gives us a standardized procedure to equip our educators to bring diverse perspectives in a culturally sensitive way. There are some who are afraid that if we educate our students and our teachers about the many challenges that certain students face, or about perspectives of history and society from a non-white perspective, that this may cause disunity or separation. But actually, the opposite is true. Cultural appreciation and exposing students to many worldviews helps breed compassion and understanding. It does not divide us, it connects us. And equity policy brings various perspectives to the decision-making table. It also equips our educators to grow in their sensitivity to the cultural backgrounds of all of our students so that they can better connect with our students. It helps them to better understand the challenges that many families face that may hinder them from being as involved with their children's education or from having easy access to enrichment activities. When we understand this, we're better able to address those challenges and work toward the goal of helping all our students achieve their highest potential. And finally, when we support our teachers in their efforts to prepare our children for both the beauty and the harsh realities of our world, our students are better enabled to connect and to thrive. Thank you.
Laurie Kirschner, lack of water availability.
Hi, thanks. I'll be quick. You probably know that teenagers now are, they're really ecologically minded. They're aware of climate change and, recycling and all that sort of thing. Can I just make a recommendation? I really think it's great that you guys are extending the free lunch and so forth, but if you could maybe put in some water stations so they can refill their water bottles. I can't tell you how anxiety-ridden my daughter is about all the water bottles she sees getting thrown literally in trash cans. And if we could just get some sort of refill. They did it at Reading High School. I know you can do it here. That's all I have.
Jeff Giannakovo, equity plan.
So I'm kind of kicking myself in the pants because I forgot my visual aid that I brought. My art teacher would have been proud. But so I want everybody to picture like a 24-inch by 24-inch box. It's got the word us on it. It's labeled us. It could also stand for the United States. Inside this box, I'd like us all in this room to think of our shared history, a history that is us. It's from the United States. It's a shared history. But for us in this room, it's not an acted on history, but it is our shared history all the same. What I want, as a result of all of this discussion, is for our students, adults for that fact, to understand this shared history, learn it, know it, and recognize it. But I don't think anybody should be left holding that box, be made to prop it up, be made to bear its weight, because it is heavy. I get that. I want all students to recognize the terrible, hurtful, painful sins of the past. Further, I want all students to recognize where some of those sins still do exist today. Call them out and be a champion for them all. But I want no student, no single one student left holding that box. As of late, there's a lot of cartoons going around about how we use boxes in society to create equity as opposed to equality. I totally get that definition. How I've lived my life is looking for opportunities to give a box for someone to stand on, whether that's in business, in my personal life, in my volunteer time. And that's what I hope deep down we can teach all of our students to understand, that they understand the past, understand where problems exist today, and go out of their way to give someone else their box so someone else can stand on their box. But again, no one should be left holding that box. Here's an example of that. I was speaking to a parent of color on this topic, equity, as I have a handful of people over the last handful of weeks. This statement is one of those things in the box that he told me he's had to tell his children. One day you'll learn how black you are. And that broke my heart because it's a statement I'll never have to, a conversation I'll never have to have with my sons. But in that near hour-long conversation, at no point did this father expect me to hold that box for him. He's lived what's in the box, and I've learned what's in it. So maybe someday we can close that box.
1 minute.
Use it as a permanent building block in how our society moves forward with unity for the benefit of all. So in closing, I really truly do hope that our equity discussion next week's a positive one for the benefit of all students. That's that part. Board, thank you for looking at the library thing. If we click the link, seriously, it's page 34. I can show you after, but it was right there, okay? So we could have clicked the link. All right, thanks.
Gwen Hill, Equity.
I'm here tonight to ask the board to pass an anti-CRT resolution. We're all here, whether you're a board member, administrator, a parent, a community member, a grandparent, because we love our children. So I just don't understand why there's hesitation to do this. As a family, we go to a lot of community events, mainly sports, but other things too. Our calendar is always full. I've never seen a problem in the Wilson community. Isn't that something that we all should be proud of? We have a very diverse family. When I first spoke to you in June, I showed you some pictures of my family. I'm kind of the anomaly in my family, me and my husband, and I wouldn't have it any other way. We haven't experienced an issue either. Are we just lucky? I don't know. I don't know any parent who does not promote anything but love, kindness, and acceptance, not only in my family, but also in the Wilson community, except maybe Cowboys fans. Just kidding. That's my one joke for tonight. Anyway, love you Cowboys fans. Just kidding. But for some reason, this board went off the rails and decided to create and introduce an equity policy without parent, grandparent, community input, or involvement. I know the tabletop equity discussion is planned for September 28th, but unfortunately, the damage here is already done. The Wilson community is fractured. Numerous examples of CRT and politics in our school have been provided to this board. Nothing has been done. The divide of our community only grows. The liberal teachers and parent attacks and retaliation on conservative children has begun. It needs to stop now before we reach a point of no return. Neutrality training for teachers was mentioned at the last meeting. Has that been explored at all? Because I thought it was a really great idea. The 2020-2021 overall evaluation of Dr. Fadley found on the district website advises that he needs improvement in the following areas: shared vision, culture of learning, decision-making, family and community, and ethics.
1 minute.
That's a problem. No wonder our community is in such a sad state of disrepair. We can do better, Wilson, for everyone. You've all said that CRT has no place in Wilson, so why the hesitation? Vote it out now, 9-0. Thank you.
Mr. Maravich, may I approach the community member that's wearing an inappropriate mask and make sure that she's following the rules?
Mrs. Cocker?
Randolph Blatt, debate.
Hello, Board. I'm back again as a previous school board member. And I want to remind those who are running for election that you, I believe, on October 3rd, have a Zoom debate. Will you show up? You certainly don't talk here. So isn't it time you talk about the, what was the number? 5.6% increase? A huge reserve of which you can borrow money from a bank instead of taking our taxpayer money? The secrecy with the equity committee? These are things you should talk about if you're at the debate. I'm debating whether you'll be at the debate. But listen, you have challengers. You have at least 4 write-ins. 4 write-ins. It'll be interesting, won't it? First time you'll be challenged. The other elections, you were never challenged. But now that you finally realize you have to get the community involved, thus, I could not apply for the equity committee until the change was made. I'm a grandfather, but my grandsons are in media. But my daughter graduated from Wilson in 2000, and I was on the board. And let me tell you, it was a great time for Wilson because we treated everyone the same. And as a matter of fact, at the football game, I had a previous superintendent talk to me, and he said, "What's going on at Wilson?"
1 minute.
It's so changed. And he gave me names of students, regardless of their color, their background, their religious beliefs, that were treated all the same. And yet this board is looking at it differently. So I challenge you to participate in the debate, and may the best person win. Thank you.
Brian Chavinsky, 17 non-agenda community.
Good evening. I come here with some questions for our community and our school board. Do we know the true intent of the leadership behind the Wilson School Board Watch, Responsible Parents for Wilson School Board PAC, and Kinetic Faith? We know they plan together using Kinetic Faith's playbook. At times, they foment disinformation, misinformation, fear, force, and intimidation against this community. How will they escalate their methods at the next level? Members of the Wilson School Board Watch leadership have recently shared anti-Muslim content on their Facebook page. They deleted it, but do not denounce it. Why not? Kinetic Faith's own founder, a self-described extremist, has made posts with quotes from Thomas Jefferson. The tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. In the comments to this post, he's asked, should we dig mass graves or let them rot? His response, and I quote, I think laying out in the open as a reminder would be the best course in these times. Bodies laying in our street. Is this the temperament we want to have be part of our school? What do you all think? My call to action to each of you is do not sit idly by and be apathetic about this. Do not let the leadership of the Wilson School Board Watch, Responsible Parents for Wilson School Board PAC, and Kinetic Faith terrorize you or this community. Mr. Rogers said it best. Most of us, I believe, admire strength. It's something we tend to respect in others, desire ourselves, and wish for our children. Sometimes, though, I wonder if we confuse strength with other words, like aggression and even violence. Real strength is neither male nor female, but it is, quite simply, one of the finest characteristics a human being can possess. You all possess strength. All of us, whether you are left, center, right, can show strength to protect our community together. Show your strength at the ballot box this November 2nd. Vote to re-elect our school board. Thank you.
Patrick Lehman, Equality.
May I rescind my spot? I'm fine not speaking at this time.
Dave Voigt, CRT.
Greetings, and thank you, School Board, very much for your service. The issue of critical race theory really need not be divisive. As a retired economics and modern U.S. history teacher, I feel that there is no need to panic when someone mentions critical race theory. To me, CRT has always been simply teaching our history the way it really happened. Our kids are smart. They'll know if we're sugarcoating, and they'll respect us if we tell the truth. And if the truth hurts, we have to tell it like it really happened. That's just the way it is. If racism occurred, we have to acknowledge it. In essence, we have to call a spade a spade. I mean, think about it. How else can you teach about slavery? Did black people on the Ivory Coast volunteer to come here so they could become slaves? Did Native Americans appreciate the near genocide thrust upon them? Did Mexico cheerfully pay us $6 million for what is now the American Southwest after we provoked them and then crushed them in the late 1840s Mexican War? Did the Chinese thank us for excluding them in the 1882 Chinese Exclusion Act? And did Japanese Americans enjoy being stuck in relocation camps during World War II, while German Americans faced no similar consequences? You have to teach about our past mistakes so we don't repeat them. Of course, love America, but realize that no one or no country is perfect. The answer is to learn from our past mistakes and celebrate our differences. If we start celebrating our differences from a young age, maybe we can prevent a whole lot of problems later on. And this is very important. It's not about making our students feel bad or guilty.
1 minute.
In my 40 years of teaching, that just doesn't happen. So, love America, learn from our mistakes, embrace our differences, and don't let CRT tear us apart. Thank you.
Marlene Fairs, Equity.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and thank you to the board in serving our students. It is crucial to examine the intersections where students can become disenfranchised from learning. The cumulative effect leads to marginalization of entire segments of the student body. I wanted to repeat data that was shared at a board meeting last month by Dr. Kennedy, which informs the need to have an equity policy in place here at Wilson School District. The data was the student demographics for summer school. We have two types of summer school. One is the accelerated and get ahead, and the other is to recover due to failure. For the accelerated summer school option for students to get ahead, the data is white students were 78%, Black were 2%, Hispanic was 8%, Asian was 12%, and free and reduced lunch was 9%. For the summer school credit recovery, these are students who failed the course and need to make up credits. White students made up 38%, Black 21%, Hispanic 39%, Asian 2%, and the free and reduced population was 65% of those students. So just think about that. The data illustrates the disparity of how our students in this district are being educated. This is not equity. Therefore, I support the equity policy that will identify and remove institutional barriers that result in achievement and/or opportunity gaps for students, and implement practices and procedures that ensure a student's educational success is neither predetermined or predicated by factors such as the student's race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, student with identified disabilities, individual learning needs, social or economic status, or other identity-related factors. I'm extremely pleased with the Wilson School District has taken this step to adopt a formal equity policy and of the high-level engagement with teachers, administrators, community stakeholders in drafting, vetting, and finalizing this policy. Thank you.
Megan Crick, Equity.
Real quick, just a reminder, the comments from the audience should not appear at this time while people are speaking. Give them respect like we will give to you too, please. Thank you.
Thank you for having me up here. I have 3 kids in the Wilson School District. One just graduated last year and has moved on to Villanova University. The other 2 are in 4th and 5th grade at Whitfield. I am a really quiet person, and I don't want to be standing up here right now, but I've watched these meetings be dominated by one voice. Well, those people don't speak for me, and they don't speak for most of the people I know. We are also a part of this community, and our voices are just as important. I'm tired of looking the other way while parents bulldoze their way through important and nuanced conversations because of their own fear. My son, who just graduated, has moved on to a very demanding college program. He got there because of his work ethic, but also from the foundation he got from his Wilson education. I'm proud to be a part of the Wilson community, and I feel fortunate for all of the academic opportunities our kids are offered. Educational systems tend to put a lot of emphasis on grades and academic outcomes, which I understand, obviously. But social and emotional intelligence is just as important. I'm always really proud of my kids when they get good grades, but I'm even prouder when they're good humans. Diversity, inclusion, representation, and equity are all important pieces of that puzzle. One thing that really concerns me is I see so much talk of proof. Where's the proof we have a problem? Where's the proof we need a policy? Where's the proof that this policy works? I implore you to think about the fact that not all growth is measurable. Not all harm is measurable either. I often wonder what that proof looks like. Are we supposed to wait for the bad outcomes? Or are we supposed to proactively make sure that everyone that comes in contact with our kids is equipped to handle the diverse population of Wilson? This does not just apply to race. This applies to our LGBTQ population, our neurodiverse population, kids who may be experiencing homelessness, or anything of that nature. Everyone starts from a different point. All of the kids that come to Wilson come in a different package, as Dr. Fadley said. Every person wants to be recognized for what makes them unique. Our kids deserve educators who understand diversity and inclusion and can meet them where they are. Making kids fear discussions about race produces adults who can't talk about race, and I feel like that's why we're in this position now. So for the parents who think Wilson has a bad reputation, I don't agree with you, and you don't speak for me. For the parents who malign our educators for actively seeking out tools to better understand the diverse population they serve, you don't speak for me. For the people full of fear that an equity policy will somehow take something from their kids, you don't speak for me. I refuse to stand by and let the voice of misinformation and fear dominate such an important conversation. Our kids deserve a school that is equipped to serve every child who walks through that door.
Tammy Keener, CRT Equity.
Good evening. Before I even start, Dr. Fadley, you embarrassed Gwen by putting a mask on her. Could you do it with that gentleman over there, too, with the red hair? His mask was down over his mouth the whole conversation he was speaking. So I'm actually afraid to stand near the microphone. So if you are going to embarrass one side, I ask that you embarrass both. Now, I'll start tonight. Thank you, first of all, for allowing me to be here tonight. We, the people, have been requesting over the last 4 months that critical race theory or equity not be taught in our school. Dr. Fadley, you assured us that it was not going to be taught. Some parents disagree. But while critical race theory or equity may not be taught as a course curriculum at this moment, it may very well be part of the thinking of some teachers and thereby find its way into the classroom. And there is evidence that some teachers' training programs at Wilson emphasize critical race theory and emphasis on equity, diversity, and the topics that many find inappropriate K through 12 classrooms. I have documentation here to prove it. The outpouring of the kids, parents, and concerns are overwhelming. The segregation, the bullying, the masking of our children, it's all about control. It has nothing to do with their health or education. The welfare of our children belongs to the parents. It is your job to educate and not indoctrinate. It is the parents' right to explain divorce and blended families, not yours. Please get back to the basics. Wilson has removed biology and replaced it with gender identity. You removed algebra and replaced it with Common Core. And now you're pushing CRT or equity with racism and Marxism, pitting our children against each other by the color of their skin. This is indoctrination.
1 minute.
It is not your job or the teacher's job to push your political ideology on the children. If students know your political affiliation, you have failed as an educator. So there may be well a basis for the concerns that have been expressed by the public at the school board meetings. Therefore, I would like to suggest that the board ask Dr. Fadley personally to thoroughly investigate the situation and present the findings at the board as well as to the public. That will be a quick and efficient way to determine whether there is a problem, and if there is a problem, merely identifying and uncovering it will go a long way towards solving it. I would also like to suggest that equity and critical race theory be removed from the language of Wilson and propose a new policy to create encouraging, demeaning, and threatening a student toward any political stance, whether it be conservative or progressive, not be tolerated at this district. Schools should be learning, and thank you. And I would just like to quickly say that under the umbrella, and this is from a very good source, not TikTok, social emotional learning, critical race theory, equity, intersexuality, comprehensive sex education, welcoming classrooms, gender identity, changing of values and beliefs are all words that are under the critical race theory.
Mrs. Keener, you need to wrap it up, please.
We all should be concerned. This will divide our children versus
Thank you.
Mr. Gary W. Rogers, anti-CRT resolution.
Just as a reminder to all of the speakers this evening, if your mask is loose-fitting, please make sure you hold it above your nose and adhere to the time limits that are established.
Good evening. Over the last several weeks, we have listened to countless examples of equity being used to implement CRT programs within school districts. And although Superintendent Fadley says he has no plans on implementing a CRT program at Wilson, we are already hearing of CRT-based lessons and CRT-based teaching aids being used within the Wilson School District classrooms. If these examples are not seeds of CRT program, at a minimum, it shows a lack of good judgment on the part of certain Wilson teachers. Therefore, to protect the Wilson students from such misguided teaching, I would like to urge the board to immediately pass a well-constructed anti-CRT resolution. I also call on Superintendent Fadley to be more in touch with what is happening within the classrooms to ensure that CRT does not creep into the Wilson School District from a lack of supervisory oversight. Additionally, we have discovered in districts across the country, after equity policies are implemented and inevitably fail to raise the performance of the lower performing students, in order to meet their equity goals, the school districts begin to dramatically diminish their academic standards for all students. I would therefore like to urge the board to pass a resolution that prohibits the lowering of academic standards and prohibits the elimination of advanced level math, science, engineering, and technology courses. And I'd like to remind you that there are 4 members of this board up for re-election in November. Ask yourself, did these board members represent you when they voted to build a $34 million Performing Arts Center? Did they represent you when they increased your school taxes by 5.6%? Did they represent you when they voted to implement a mandatory masking policy? Are they representing you now when they openly support equity and CRT? Watch how they vote on the proposed anti-CRT resolution. Watch how they vote on the resolution to maintain high academic standards. If this is the kind of representation you desire, then you know who to vote for. But if you believe, as I do, that Wilson community deserves better, then understand you have options. So on November 2nd, make your voices heard.
Dwight Wegman, CRT.
Good evening. We've been discussing the equity and CRT policy now for the past 4 months. In that time, we've been told that CRT and equity are two different things, and that CRT is not being taught at Wilson. We are now not even a month into school, and we have documented incidents where CRT-themed assignments have been given in 9th grade history and 11th grade English classes. We also have the Scholastic Voices book purchase handout with racially charged content to our early elementary school students. We also know that discussing racial issues requires a lot of training to be done properly. Are our teachers even equipped to handle these discussions without doing more damage? And where are we on Mr. Martin's recommendation at last board meeting about a neutrality training session for teachers so that students get a balanced perspective rather than a biased one? Now, my question is, if the position of this administration and school board is that no CRT is to be taught, how do these incidents occur? Wouldn't it make sense to get in front of these issues rather than reacting to them and trying to clean up a mess? Where is the leadership of this administration? Can this administration produce just one communication for the community instructing teachers to avoid CRT-themed assignments? I would really like to see one. And if you cannot produce a document, what does that really tell the Wilson community about the administration and board's position on CRT? It would say that you're just gaslighting us, telling us one thing while quietly doing something else. You may think our group is small. However, our support in the community is larger than you think. Many parents are reluctant to voice support because they don't want to see their children targeted for retaliation. Children should be off limits as we go through this debate. I would think everyone can agree on that. Furthermore, if the position of this administration and board is that Wilson is not going to teach CRT, why is passing a no CRT resolution taking so long? Mr. Negrini presented the proposal last month. Why are we kicking the can down the road? I can tell you exactly why. There's an election on November 2nd where 4 members of this board are on the ballot. The Wilson community should know exactly where each board member stands on CRT before this election. I will tell you that each meeting where you ignore and don't pass the no CRT resolution tells the community more and more about the true position of the administration and board. Pass the no CRT resolution now. Certain members of this board were so focused on masking to protect children from COVID so that they violated established board policy by voting on the issue at 3 consecutive meetings until they got their way. Where is the same level of commitment to prevent our students from damaging CRT narratives? The Wilson community is watching. Thank you.
Argy Hansen, Equity Policy.
Hi, my name is Argy Hansen. I am the proud parent of 2 Wilson students, a 7th grader and a 10th grader. I'm also a proud Wilson graduate. Thank you for your time tonight and for all your hard work over the past few months, especially as it's been pretty difficult here. I looked over the equity policy draft. It's really easy to understand. It prioritizes educational equity for fair and just allocation of resources and opportunities based on each student's needs, as well as identifying barriers to achievements. It's not that hard. Barriers to achievements for students can look like many things. Mental health can affect a student's ability to achieve, poverty, and trauma. Passing the equity policy would benefit all of those students. Why wouldn't we want to support them? I ask why anyone wouldn't want to pass a policy to give all students an opportunity to be successful in our district. The focus seems to only be on race, and despite the fact that the detractors can't seem to define educational equity or CRT, or as we've heard, conflate the two, they know they're staunchly against it. And in fact, anytime a teacher introduces a lesson that even mentions race, they automatically label it as CRT. It couldn't possibly be something else. There's no context involved. They have no idea what's going on in the classroom. A couple of years ago, my son read a couple of the books that have been kind of called out. Where was the outrage then? The books haven't changed that much. I read those books alongside with my child, and I felt very comfortable with him reading them. If somebody else is uncomfortable with their child reading a book, they can take care of that. I'd rather they not tell my child what to read. I understand that it can be difficult for some people to view things through a different lens or even acknowledge their own privilege or bias.
1 minute.
Maybe they feel uncomfortable, but that's not bullying, as I've heard it being called around here. Bullying is an ongoing thing that happens many, many times, like when people are targeted for race or gender or sexuality over and over again. My kids have told me they have seen kids be called all kinds of horrible things over the years. I'm sure if you walk through these halls, you can hear all sorts of language being thrown around. Some people may make excuses for those kids, saying that they don't understand the impact or that they're kidding. That's privilege. The fact that students might not come forward because they're scared to be targeted, that they are afraid of retaliation, or they're told to turn the other cheek, or that those kids don't understand, or that maybe they're reporting these things to people that look just like their bullies. That's not equity. Are people so afraid to face their own biases or acknowledge someone else's truth that they're willing to put their heads in the sand and take many steps backwards and stifle everyone's learning? Having an equity policy would help in these manners. So I want to thank you all and encourage you to continue working on this equity draft for all of our students. Thank you.
Lisa Marie Stonaha, thank you, Equity.
My name is Lisa Marie Stonaha, S-T-O-N-A-H-A. At the beginning of this year, it became increasingly clear that many of our classrooms were missing American flags and not saying the Pledge of Allegiance. As you can imagine, many parents were disappointed, upset, and concerned with the lack of attention to this by our school district. These concerns intensified as we watched what was happening in Afghanistan and coming up on our 20-year anniversary of 9/11. These concerned parents reached out online to gather support and create a plan. These same concerned parents then reached out to their schools, teachers, administrators, etc., to ask for help and a reason. Rather than accusing these parents of having an agenda or yelling at them for bringing this to their attention, our principals, administrators, teachers, and team members chose to listen to these concerns, conduct some research, and immediately acted to correct this oversight. This is true leadership. Many of us in the community would like to personally thank Dr. Trickett for taking this on and ensuring that every classroom had a flag, that the pledge was being said, and for coming up with a process so that it does not happen again at the start of next year. We also want to thank principals like Mrs. Byrne and Dr. Yiser, who listened to parents, teachers, and students and took a positive action. Thank you to the many teachers, principals, staff, and team members that listened to understand and acted. We know you have a busy job, and we respect you and your role, and we truly appreciate you. Their leadership is one that should be emulated and admired throughout our district. And this is an example of how you handle parental concerns. You listen, you seek to understand, and you communicate. There are genuine concerns and fear in this community about how Wilson is handling equity. And unfortunately, there have been recent events that have confirmed these fears. Wilson is faced with a choice. You can continue to choose to dismiss these fears. You can choose to say these parents are carrying out an agenda.
1 minute.
You can say the parents are just uneducated or spreading lies or just complaining online. Or you can follow the lead of some of your great administrators, principals, teachers, and staff members and choose to listen. Choose to ask questions, choose to seek to understand and work to bridge the gap. You have an opportunity to find out why there is so much fear and concern around this. And while some of you sitting around this table have done exactly that, more of you have not. Many in the community truly do not feel heard. And by doubling down on those that are willing to stand here and speak up, you are closing the communication line versus opening them. The choice is yours. We all know that if we stop listening and communicating, we lose. And again, I want to thank those that made us feel a key part of this community and for working with us. It is appreciated and noticed. Thank you.
Amy Murray, Equity.
Hi, thank you for taking the time to hear my thoughts. What is equity? Equity is the quality of being fair and impartial. We have a diverse group of students here at Wilson. It's pretty challenging creating a curriculum that encompasses all of their situations. Beginning last year, we noticed our daughter's assignments and class discussions were taking on a different face. Listening to the classes our daughter was enrolled in opened our eyes to an inequality within the school that has evolved even further this year. Political agendas are playing a big role in what's being presented to our children. Now, I don't really care what side of the so-called aisle you stand on. There is no aisle in school. Sorry, I lost my place. Remember, equity equals fair and impartial. We have watched the divisive topics chosen to teach our children critical thinking skills, destroy friendships amongst peers, and child-teacher relationships. We have watched our children physically divided in a classroom because they were asked to choose which constitutional right they would rather give up, the right to vote or the right to bear arms. And please move to the side of the room designated for your choice. We are Americans. We don't give up our constitutional rights. We have watched children pigeonholed into a way of thinking that supports an agenda by only providing opinion articles on non-white immigration and asking our children after reading those articles to write what their opinion is about, who qualifies to be an American, and requiring them to use supporting facts from the articles to back up their opinions. What if their opinions don't align with the articles? Again, equity equals fair and impartial. This isn't teaching critical thinking. Critical thinking skills need to be developed by using non-inflammatory topics. Our children are still learning how to navigate their emotions, their critical thinking skills. When we offer these hot topics as a means to teach critical thinking, we are inviting an environment where children don't feel safe to express their thoughts and feelings. The topics are not inclusive, focusing on non-white immigration while excluding immigrants who are Caucasian is racially motivated and divisive. If we want to do a lesson on the challenges of immigration, let's include all immigration. Our children have had a rough 2 years trying to navigate a pandemic in the middle of a heated presidential election, social isolation, hateful language on our televisions and social media. In a moment, our daughter will be sharing her very personal story. I ask you to listen with an open heart and mind. I remind you she is just a child, and it took her a lot of courage to come here to speak to you today. Thank you.
Skylar Murray, Equity.
My name is Skylar Murray. I am here to share my story and how CRT and politics in school has quickly torn my life apart. But first, I would like to give you an opportunity to get to know me. I am the oldest of 7 children. I was severely neglected and abused from birth until the age of 12. I moved to 12 different schools during that time. My siblings and I were watched by strangers in exchange for drugs. Since I was the oldest, the parental role was put on me because my mom and her boyfriend were high or passed out. I was a parent at the age of 3. I never had a childhood of my own and tried to give my siblings what I would never get. I am alive, and if I did not take charge and fight for our lives, I would not be standing in front of you today. At age 5, I lived on Cotton Street in Reading and would have walked alone to my neighbor's to ask for milk because we could not afford it. A guy was murdered in the back alley where we played. A few months later, after that, we were homeless, bouncing from home to home, sleeping on people's floors. We were then accepted in a homeless shelter, but couldn't stay because my mom couldn't pass a drug test. I blamed myself. My siblings and I were split up by BCYS. They took us from our mother. I could go on for hours about my childhood and how it was destroyed by the ones who should have taken care of me, but that's not why I'm here. I'm here because school was my savior. I loved school up until last year. I know everyone here knows how intense everything is due to the presidential election, BLM, COVID-19, and many other things that had happened in 2020. 2020 was a hard year for so many people, but I feel as if adults don't really know how impactful it is on children of all ages. Kids should be learning about grammar, spelling, math, science, and whatever other subjects there are. I'm sure I'm missing a lot because Wilson has a great education program. But lately, it's been all about politics and critical race theory. The second day of civics this year, we were divided as a class, more like I was divided from the class. We were doing would you rather discussions, where you had to go to the side of the room which aligned with your beliefs. This is dividing kids and pushing kids out of friend groups. This should not be happening in school. In English class, we were learning about critical race theory when we really should be learning about writing essays, doing book reports, learning about grammar and spelling, and learning from the mistakes so we can become better writers. In one of our English assignments we have already had this year, I was asked the question, what do you think should be the determining factor when it comes to who you consider to be an American and why? I had a really hard time with this response because I know I don't see things the way they wanted me to. I shouldn't be worried about how I might lose friends because of a difference of opinion on a school assignment. I had a teacher argue with me on why I should change my opinion. She was questioning my opinion instead of helping me when I asked for help. Due to a lot of friends being in my civics class and my English class and discussing politics and mask mandates and vaccines at lunch, I have lost friends. I've received many texts from people saying that they are no longer my friend because I don't have the same views as them. I am being socially bullied in school for adult situations and conversations. I do not think politics and critical race theory belong in school. Children are being brought up to love and care for each other as equals. When we get to high school, we're being divided because of subjects and the lessons they are teaching at school. The teachers are pushing their political opinions on children. I also had to do the assignment that was about how the Black community lives in poverty while the white community is thriving. As you can tell from my story and my personal experience, that is not true. I know several other people that have gone through similar things. The things we are learning in school are dividing students by race, political views, and wealth. This needs to stop.
Dwayne Carlson.
Good evening. Skylar's my daughter, and as you have heard, her experience is happening to other children. She's not the only child experiencing this. Skylar has always found a way to stay positive and upbeat, regardless of what adversity she had been facing. Until now, with this critical race theory being implemented, the politics being brought into school, one-sided politics, mind you. Our daughter had to be forced to go to school today. Our daughter had said that she feels like dropping out. She's no longer smiling, she's no longer laughing, and she's no longer seeing school as a safe haven. This is what school should be for our children, a safe haven. And many of you board members have made it so that our schools are no longer safe. CRT and politics have no place in our schools. Our children don't deserve this. Our children should not feel like they are singled out by the color of their skin or the fact that they believe in the Constitution. And that is what has happened to our daughter. I know we're not supposed to single people out on this board, but there are 3 of you who have pushed your liberal agenda on our children. The teachers, they have no clue what they're doing. Their delivery system is harming our children. They are giving opinionated, one-sided stories, not facts, not history. If our children do not conform to these articles, they're singled out. Our daughter's English teacher knew that her opinion differed from everyone else in the class. Not everyone, but most of the kids. And yet that English teacher still chose to put her article up on the screen for everyone to read, and she included her name. This can't happen. It can't. I am not somebody who gets involved in politics, but after watching my daughter cry and the suffering that she has gone through, hearing similar stories from other parents, I am going to do anything in my power to remove the 3 Ks on this board. Enough's enough. You have harmed our children. You have not helped them. These teachers are teaching CRT. They're pushing one-sided political agendas. I don't care if it's Republican, Democrat, or liberal. No teacher has that right to push their own personal beliefs on our children. These kids can't even vote yet. And the other question I have is this: how do we get a superintendent? And is there truth to the fact that he was fired for his liberal point of views and not listening to the parents at his last school district in Boyertown? Again, I've been trying to find that answer, but if someone can please explain to me how we hire a superintendent. Okay, then people like myself, many others, are going to be learning how to stand at polling stations and getting the message out of why we need to replace certain board members. And to the rest of you, thank you for what you have done. Thank you for being non-biased to our kids.
Michael Kaminskis, Non-Agenda Equity Task Force.
I've been trying to educate myself, so I read a number of Paul Gorski's articles and keeping an open mind. And there are 2 points that Gorski came up with, or that I picked from his articles. I read about 6 of them. 1, no stereotypes. Don't stereotype anybody in how you look at them, et cetera, because of how they look, how they talk, or anything else. Keep a clear and open mind and provide all perspectives. One of the most bigoted people I've ever worked with was my last supervisor in the military, a Marine Corps general, or Marine Corps colonel from Mississippi. He wanted to know where I lived because he was looking for accommodations. I told him the apartment complex, and I told him the special program through Fort Myers that I used to get the apartment. He went to the apartment, and the day after that, he came up to me, and this is the only time he said anything about that was bigoted, but it was very strong. He said, "How can you live there? All the different languages that are being talked." I just looked at him because he didn't deserve a response. My wife speaks 3 languages. I'm used to languages. I relish it. The previous person discussed about showing all the different aspects. Greenwood Massacre in Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1921 should be compared to the George Floyd riots last year. Oh, the George Floyd peaceful demonstrations last year. That the insurance companies paid $1 billion, that's with a B, dollars in damages for. However, when the whole Greenwood area of Tulsa, Oklahoma, which was the most affluent black community in the United States at the time, 1921, was burned to the ground after it was looted by the people, the whites, who were police to control the situation, after the National Guard came out with machine guns and 300 blacks were killed but no whites. And after everything was burned down, the insurance companies refused to pay because it was a riot. Present both of those sides to the students to show the inequities of what happens. Okay. That's 3 minutes? Okay. Thank you.
Ingrid Olson Powers, Equity.
Good evening. I currently have 3 children in the Wilson School District. 2 are in the Wilson School District, 1 will be shortly. I was going to come up and read something that I had wrote, but I'm just going to wing it. First of all, I want to thank all of you for all of your hard work and making this equity policy a topic and something that I hope that you pass. Both of my sons, my husband is black, both of our kids are biracial. I listen board meeting after board meeting about how racism doesn't exist in Wilson. There aren't situations going on in the school right now. However, my son, who was in kindergarten, was being pushed down, told to stay there because he looked like dirt at recess. He did all the right things and reported it. Nothing was done. This happened on and on multiple times. Finally, my son pushed the child back. All of a sudden, my son was then taken to the principal's office. He was talked to, and I was called and told that he was going to be watched from then on. I immediately called and contacted the school and said, that's ridiculous. We've had emails with you. I have called and spoke to the teacher. Nothing was done when he was being bullied, but now all of a sudden that he's the aggressor, something's being done. Going forward this same year, later in the year towards the end, a few of the kids were mentioning how my son's hair was more coarse than theirs. They were given permission by the teacher to touch his hair because they wanted to know what it felt like. My son came home hysterically crying, begging us to shave his head. I don't think that the teacher meant any ill will by doing that. I think that honestly, she was just uneducated on how it was going to make him feel. Then if I'm also going to go back, my husband is African American, graduated Wilson. When his family moved here in '88, they were in the Shiloh Hills community. They were told
1 minute.
They went to go look at their house. It was a brand new development. They were told that they passed everything, all the credit checks, had the money, everything, and then they were told they couldn't buy the home. It wasn't until they contacted a lawyer that they found out that they could buy the home. They just didn't want them there because they were African American. My husband was also the only African American on the football team in his graduating class, and he has multiple stories, and he gets angry that I come to these because he says nothing's going to change. I'm hoping that I can prove my husband wrong and I can make this different for my sons and daughter when she's here, because it is happening, and it's very sad, but I just hope that it stops. Thank you.
Ann Sawyer, Dead Trees and Possible Sinkhole.
I don't really know how to start. I live across the street for 29 years. I never had a problem. As of last year, I had a tree in my yard and a fence that was broken. You have a lot of dead trees on your property that are pulling branches and limbs into my yard. Again, Wednesday, the 8th, when we had that bad storm, another branch, big branch on the fence and another limb in my yard. The last time in year 20 when I had to get the tree removed, yous were not responsible. I had to go through my insurance. I refused to go through my insurance again. I paid somebody to come and cut up what was on the fence and in the yard because I don't want my insurance to constantly go up. And as far as you might possibly have a sinkhole where you removed a ginkgo tree several years ago, your spot is about so big, then there's a depression. I know the guy mowing the lawn never gets off the lawnmower, so I don't even know if he notices. That's all I had to say. I just wanted to make sure you knew and maybe you could do something about getting rid of the dead trees before they come in my house.
Barbara McLaughlin, CRT.
Thank you. We've lived in Spring Township for 43 years. I graduated from Governor Mifflin, and I'm still connected to friends, and I found out I knew more about the Mifflin School Board candidates than the Wilson School Board. So I started attending the meetings to help me decide who to vote for in November, as all the candidates are running on both sides. I see my grandsons loving all their friends, seeing them for the content of their character, like kindness, honesty, and the ability to play well with others, not the color of their skin. They look at police and all the first responders as heroes, again, not the color of their skin. I don't want to see this change once they start public schools. I'm concerned about the direction Wilson is taking for the future of my grandkids. I listen to other stories about children using the N-word, and I think at the elementary level, this is likely learned at home. Perhaps we should start mandatory parenting classes instead of pitting our children against each other. See in the election with the teachers union donating $3 million to the current administration, $600,000 to the previous administration, is evidence to the politics in education. The teachers union literally was running our country by deciding when schools should be in person or not, for whatever reason they could find. CRT is being pushed by the union as they have lawyered up to protect teachers who teach CRT and equity. The funding is public knowledge. We just need to follow the money. While China is teaching their children to excel in math and science, we want to teach our children about racism, oppression, division, and hatred. It will lead to more bullying, which is a huge problem that needs to be dealt with now. It's not an easy fix, but it definitely needs your attention.
1 minute.
Our children are not lab rats that you can experiment on, then in a few years find out we've negatively influenced a whole generation of young minds. In the past, curriculums were tried, and we only learned later how the students were negatively affected. For example, I had to buy a PC in 1998 because my sophomore was not getting the training in school. Emphasis was on sports and the new stadium at that time. I would like to see the Wilson School Board vote for what is best for our students, equality and not division, respect our country, not support the racial groups. Black Lives Matter does not belong in school. All lives matter, and you should not force radical left woke agendas. I personally like Morgan Freeman's quote, "Do you want to know how to stop racism? Stop talking about it." Thank you.
Stephanie O'Brien, Equity.
Good evening. I wanted to say thank you to every one of you for what you do. I know it's not a paid position, and I know it's been difficult, so to all of you, thank you. I'm going to start with some Merriam-Webster definitions. My first definition is civility, as so we don't forget. Civility is being civilized, conducting yourself with courtesy and politeness. So that we're clear, because after these many weeks we still aren't, equity's definition is fairness or justice in the way people are treated. And now for why we need an equity policy, the definition of the Hawthorne effect. The Hawthorne effect is defined by the stimulation to output an accomplishment that results from the mere fact of being observed under observation. If you shine a light on an area that needs improvement, suddenly there's action and there's progress. Anyone in business knows this. So why do we need an equity policy? Some say we should just do it on our own as a community. but I have seen and heard these many weeks, I don't think that we can do that. I'm not even sure most people understand what equity is. It must be stated, it must be implemented, and it must be measured. Why don't we take a look at the Allentown School District? They've had an equity framework since 2017. That's 4 years ago, before any of these things started. And I challenge you to Google Allentown and CRT. You'll find nothing comes up, nothing at all. So much for a Trojan horse. They have a vision and a mission for their equity. They have core values. Their core values are honoring each student's unique equalities, ensuring equity of access of opportunity, nurturing the pursuit of lifelong learning, promoting cultural responsiveness. If we cultivate a culture which is safe for students and they feel valued and nurtured, then we will graduate students that are ready to take on any post-secondary options they need. We can maybe take a page out of Allentown's playbook and then hopefully be singing from the same song sheet. I mean, doesn't everyone want our children, no matter race, physical disability, homelessness, food insecurity, learning disability, religion, to have their best chance? Thank you.
Tammy Ryder, CRT and water availability.
Too short for this. I just heard about this tonight and I didn't prepare anything, but I echo the water availability. So we need stations or whatever you can do about that. And as far as CRT goes, I don't think I really have anything to add to what's been said, except we're living in a socially explosive time, and these are growing pains, and they're going to happen. It's how we roll them out. We got to figure out how to do it in such a way that we take everyone into consideration. So I really appreciate everyone's honesty that came up here, because, and it's especially Skylar, you know, she came up here and she said what she had to say. But at this point, I think we need to figure out how to, these kids are smart. They're going to go home and they're going to read about this stuff themselves. So we need to figure out how we're going to present the material. CRT is what, 40 years old? But we need to figure out how we're going to present the material to them in such a way that it's not a bulldozer, doesn't come in and disrupt their whole lives like it is Skylar's. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
And that's all of the papers I have. President Hart.
Thank you to everyone who's taken the time to send emails, show up tonight, and past board meetings. Whatever your thoughts or perspectives are, we need to hear those. So I thank you for taking the time to do that. Any other business before the board? Mr. Martin?
Mr. Hart, I would like to make a comment.
Dr. Faley, real quick.
First, let me start by saying, Skylar, if your parents and you will give me the opportunity, I'd like to sit down and talk with you about your experiences in your class. Because if that's the way you were made to feel, that's not acceptable. So if you parents will give me that opportunity, I'd like to ask you to stay after the meeting and maybe we can talk. Second thing I'd like to say is that there's a lot of statements being made in the public realm, a lot of statements that may not be completely accurate. And I would encourage all of us, whatever our opinions are on a particular issue, to make sure we do everything to get the facts before we come to the microphone or post a comment on social media that may not be factual. And that should apply for everyone. So just a couple pieces of clarification before I get to my point. There were some comments made about the American flag and what this district did and didn't do in reference to that. So let me provide you with the facts on that issue. That directive came directly from my office to make sure that every classroom had an American flag. In reference to 9/11, there was an expectation communicated from my office that every school would honor the memory of the individuals that died on that day. Now, some schools did different things, and that's okay. I happen to be fortunate to attend the celebration at Spring Ridge Elementary School, where they assembled the entire student body to honor the flag by saying the Pledge of Allegiance outdoors. I was even more honored to drive up to our campuses and see the number of American flags displayed on our property. That expectation was communicated and shared by this leadership team and by our staff. And yes, the parents were involved in that, because parents partner with us in this community. So my closing comments this evening will focus on how do we move forward? How do we move forward in an environment where we hear stories or experiences that our students have in our classrooms? Well, we have to work together to establish the expectation that when we teach our students, we don't make examples of them. We don't tell them what to think. We create an environment where students have the ability and the opportunity to be globally competitive. I heard someone talk this evening about what China's doing. I spent 10 days examining their education system with 3 individuals in the school district. And I will tell you, yes, they're teaching math, they're teaching science, and they're even teaching English and how to speak English. But I tell you what, came back to the United States and to our system of education, and I tell you, we do it better. We do it better. But we are working as a district to create globally competitive graduates. And in order to do that, I heard someone else talk this evening about making sure our students are able to understand the worldview. Understand the worldview, not be told what to think about the worldview, but be able to understand all of the dynamics associated with that. I heard someone talk tonight about cultural perspective. We need to understand all of the different cultures that make up this melting pot of the United States of America. By understanding one another, we can come together. We can share and celebrate our commonalities and our differences. We want to make sure that what happens in our classroom, and we're not perfect, and I'm not saying we are. We need to make sure that what happens in our classrooms creates the ability for our students to critically think, to analyze different perspectives, and to form their own opinions. And that's what we strive to do. Our professional educators are doing their absolute best. But I truly believe that if we first seek to understand what is actually happening in the classroom before coming to an assumption, which may or may not be correct, I think we'll all be better off. And to the individual that I asked to put on an appropriate mask, if I embarrassed you, I did not intend to do so. That's never my intent. My intent is to uphold the expectations that have been established of me by this board. Now, another individual came and shared comments about my evaluation. And I'll be the first to tell you that I can improve. But I think one of the things that's important for all of us to realize is that goes for everyone in this room, not just me. It's been a tough 2 years to be a school superintendent. It's been a tough 2 years to be a board member. And until this community can set aside their differences and find a place to meet, to come to consensus, to understanding, we're going to continue to have this division. People are going to think, I'm right. No, I'm right. Well, maybe we're both wrong, and we need a new right. So I guess in closing, what I would say is we have an opportunity. We have an opportunity to do this together. But we can only do that if we check our assumptions, myself included, before we speak and assume something is a fact when it may or may not be. I take my job seriously, and I hold my staff to very high expectations. That's the reason why that this district continues to be a district of destination. The board, over the course of many years, yes, last year was a higher than normal tax increase, but the previous year, we had no tax increase. This district still is in the bottom third of millage rates in the entire county, but yet we're in the top in the achievement category. Maybe not in every single category, but in most. And that's something to be proud of. So the board members that have been on this board for 20 years, they're part of that. Board members that have been on for 7 years, they're part of that. Board members that have been on for 2 or 3 years, they're part of that. And yes, we want our community to hold us accountable, but we want to do it with grace and respect and not degrade people. That's what I would ask of this community. And if you have a problem or a concern with the teacher, go to the teacher. If your problem is not taken care of, go to the administrator. Go to the district administrator until your concern is addressed the way you believe it should be. Thank you.
I have a lot written, but it's getting late, so I'm not going to go through all this tonight, but I will stick to just my first 1 or 2 pages here. I've sat pretty quiet listening to both sides of this CRT, and it's time now, however, for me to really chirp in here. And that's because after the last couple of weeks, seeing various emails from parents showing pictures of various situations which I believe were so one-sided that they didn't present a fair approach to a situation for comment. They say this was the guise of critical thinking. Well, critical thinking is separate from what I've seen on these 5 or 6 different photographs of things happening in the classroom. I find some of them, particularly interesting because some of them are like 20 years old, comics, cartoons, 20 years old, and I'm not sure they were quite relevant. I particularly didn't like the care for the one about the Statue of Liberty, but that's, for the folks that have seen them, that's another story. But I've asked at the last board meeting that we look at a way of bridging this gap through proper education and trying to be neutral. It's not a hard concept. You show both sides. You show here's the extreme, here's the extreme here. And then you let the kids do the research, they can pick a side and make a decision. But that's not happening. It's not right now, it's not happening. Now I know that there's hopefully some plans to correct that, but this is not a situation where we have an education system that shows one side. It's not appropriate. It can't be any benefit to any student. So once again, whether this last 2 weeks was intentionally or just, an honest mistake by the instructors, these instances can't continue to filter through to the students. So I will propose once again that a session be held in one of the next work sessions on being neutral. That's not a hard concept, and it would go a long way to bridging a lot of these discussions. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Any other business before the board?
May I speak?
Mr. Case? Yes.
Mr. Martin, 100% agree with you with the neutral part. I think we can all take a lesson of advanced learning on how to present ourselves in a classroom. I don't think it could hurt anybody. When you suggest sides, you're suggesting left versus right. There's more sides than just that. So when I look at views, maybe a 360 approach, not just one or the other. We've been criticized for not speaking at times. As you, I've been pretty silent throughout this entire thing. I'm looking forward to seeing the committee of community members and parents and teachers and what comes out of that before I make any judgment. What does concern me, as I wrote earlier today, was with regard to a resolution on CRT. And the reason why I think it is irresponsible is because I'd like to understand who the judge and the jury is of what is CRT and what is not. So CRT is one thing, but I have heard over the course of the last month or so all sorts of different things that are people now consider CRT. Immigration is not CRT. We have people in our school district that don't believe in immigration. Immigration's a thing. It's what our country is built on. We can talk about things like immigration. Mike, if I can share, you mentioned some of the things that were going on in the classroom in English class is not CRT. You may not think it's critical thinking, but I want to make it clear, I don't want to be in a district that is a woke district. I want to be in a district that educates our students and has critical thinking so we can build those characteristics to our kids in the future that they're going to face once they get out of school. And I am proud to say, whether there's an election or not, I really don't care. I think it's irresponsible to pass a CRT resolution because now you are giving fuel and fire to lawsuits, harassment of teachers, book banning, what you can say in a classroom, you can't have any single discussion. Who's the judge of that? Is that the board? Is that the administration? Is it social media? We are going down a road that it's not a good road. To Dr. Faley's point, we need to find common ground. So that's kind of where I am on the situation. I want to let the public be made aware of that. There is an election coming up. If you feel different and you don't agree, please fill this chair with somebody else. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Case. Any other comments?
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
I wanted to point out something that we haven't really discussed, but that has been brought up a lot at the podium As a mother of Wilson students who are towards the younger age, I can understand why parents of younger children are very concerned about this one thing that continues to be brought up. And that's the idea that teachers would have a child stand in front of the classroom and apologize for anything that is not their responsibility. Slavery, anything in the past that is considered a topic that is either sensitive or that possibly white people in the past are guilty of committing. So that's not happening. If that happens, clearly you should notify someone. That is not happening in the Wilson School District. Nobody is making children stand in front of a room and apologize for slavery. So that's the main thing I think people are worried about when it comes to CRT. And the second thing is, I think that everyone in our community, myself included, needs to take a different approach when it comes to new information that's being brought home by your children, especially when it comes to history and English class. So I am a product of Wilson School District, very proud. When I was in Wilson School District, I took advanced history classes. It was a long time ago, so I don't necessarily remember everything. But one of the things I am pretty sure I did not learn about is the celebration now we have nationally acknowledged is Juneteenth. So that, to my shock, when I learned about it, because it was in the media, that 2 years after slavery was officially ended, 250,000 enslaved people, they weren't aware. So 2 years after slavery ended, people finally went down to Texas and notified them, hey, by the way, you're not enslaved anymore. So that's something that I didn't know, and I took advanced history classes. So I would just encourage everyone, if your child brings home something that either you weren't aware of before or you are not comfortable because you didn't know about it, that's okay. We're okay to be lifelong learners. So I'm glad that I know about that now, and it kind of spurred me to look into other things related to that and other things in history that possibly I forgot because it was, I won't say how many years ago, but it was a long time ago that I took AP history, and that's okay. So I want to encourage our community not to be afraid of things that maybe you weren't familiar with or things that seem racially, especially when it comes to slavery issues in history class, racially heavy, because I don't know another way to teach slavery to our students without discussing race. So just because something talks about race in the classroom does not mean that it's critical race theory or that it's something that they shouldn't be discussing, especially at the high school level. Okay, those kids, they are going to face, they're not going to, some of them might stay in Berks County for the rest of their lives, but Berks County is changing too. So they're not going to stay in this little bubble that we have and never talk about race and never deal with people that are of different backgrounds than they are. They have to be equipped to go out into the world and deal with a variety of different issues, different topics, and different people. So that's my piece, and I just wanted to add that into the conversation.
Thank you, Mrs. Conker. Mr. Martin?
Mr. President, a couple of things here. The history teacher that spoke earlier, I would like to talk to you afterwards because I need to give you a history lesson. And also, I do want to say something that I'm serious about this, because I guess 3 meetings ago, I was a little tough on an administrator, and there's no reason for that, and it's uncalled for, and I can't justify it, so I want to apologize to that person. So I'm not sure you'll ever forgive me, but I'm doing so. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, or board business?
Yeah, I'd like to say something, Mr. Hart.
Sure, go ahead.
I've been pretty quiet through much of this. I've asked a few questions about definitions of equity in CRT and comparisons. And I haven't made a lot of roadway in understanding what the community's context is. And so it's to the concept of context that I would like to speak. I've listened to many statements the last several meetings, and what has become clear is that rather than work to craft policy in a cohesive manner, some seek to hijack the narrative. Context matters, and much of what has been presented, both here and outside of this room, to me, has often been lacking context. Where I have seen context that had been lacking, it showed that what was shown was done so without context, specifically to have its actual meaning hidden because context wouldn't have met their narrative. Again, context matters. Where stuff has been presented with context, it has been concerning. Those wishing to dominate the conversation and those associating with them would do well to remember that we teach our earliest learners yelling and being vile are not as effective at bringing us together for common goals of supporting the kids of the district in their educational needs as dropping our own personal biases and working together. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Schneider. Any other business for the board? Looking for a motion to adjourn? Mr. Martin first.
Second, Case.
Mr. Case, thank you, everyone.